Hey, Forest City Church, today you are in for a special treat. We get to hear from our teaching pastor here at Forest City Church, Steve Carter. Steve has just released a brand new book, The Thing Beneath the Thing. It's absolutely incredible. And today we get to hear about that book, and he's going to teach it out. I think this would be one of those moments where you really lean in, send this to a friend. It's going to be one of those messages that you're going to be thinking about the entire week. And then next week, I'm going to sit down with Steve Carter. We're going to talk about the book, unpack all these different things. So stay tuned for that as well. Here is the one and only Mr. Steve Carter.
Hey, Forest City, Steve Carter here, and I'm excited today because Eric and TJ and the team asked me to do a one-off message based around my book that just came out. And this has been a work that I have just kind of spent the last few years breaking myself open, pouring myself out, and I really believe that this message can help us live the best kind of life, a life that honors Christ. And so to do this, I'm gonna do it a little differently. Wherever you are, I'd love for you to get your Bible, and we're gonna begin in the book of Esther. It's out in the Old Testament, but we're gonna do something different. We're gonna read Esther 3, but we're gonna read it backwards. And I want you to see something as we read through this passage. It says this in verse 15, the king, whose name was Xerxes, the king and Haman. Haman was like his right-hand man. It's like a little Hamilton reference. The king and Haman sat down to drink, probably a little glass of wine. They sit down to drink, and look what it says. But the city of Susa was bewildered. It's fascinating. They're just sitting down to have a drink after a long day, but the entire city is bewildered. In Hebrew, the word bewildered is the word buk. And it literally means to walk around aimlessly wondering what is going on. And that's what the entire city is doing. What's amazing is every day, maybe you and your husband or you and your wife sit down for a drink at the end of the day, but your kids are confused by the conversations that have happened or are happening at the table. Or maybe you are sitting down with your spouse or your friends, and you are just confused over the decisions that were made by your boss or by your friends. I think for many of us, we get confused. We get bewildered. We don't know what is really going on. A number of years ago, I was living in Grand Rapids. I was coming home from a time with my grandparents and my parents, and it was a little bit of a snowstorm. And I'll never forget driving, and all of this like beautiful snow was dropping. I'm in our little Honda Civic with my wife and my 9-month-old at the time. And we're driving when all of a sudden a huge chunk of ice hits our windshield. And when it hits our windshield, all of a sudden this cortisol rushes to my brain. And I'm like, something just hit us. And then it dawns on me, that didn't come from the sky. Somebody threw this at us. And so what do? I turn the Civic around, do a massive U-turn in the middle of a snowstorm, pull the car over, and my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I see someone running. They threw some ice at us. I'm gonna go catch them. And my wife's like, no, don't leave me here. I'm like, no, I'm gonna get them. I leave the car, I run across 4 lanes of traffic. There's this embankment. I think I can jump it. I realize midway through the air, I can't. I land in the midst of this, and it's filled up to my waist with freezing cold water. So now I got soaking wet, freezing pants. I am absolutely frustrated. I see someone running out in this field towards the suburban neighborhood, and I start to scream, I'm gonna find you. I've called 911. I'm gonna catch you. And then I take off running. And I'm running through this field, and I finally get to the suburban neighborhood, and because I've watched CSI, I know what to do. I run out to the middle of the street, I close my eyes, and I just start to listen. And as I'm listening, all of a sudden I hear a garage go down 3 doors down, which is a terrible band, by the way. But I run over to this house, knock on the door, soaking wet pants, and an older gentleman opens the door. And I'm like, hey, sir, did somebody just come in through your garage? And he looks at me and goes, yeah, my grandson and his buddy just did. I was like, great. And I'm thinking they're like 20-something. And I'm like, hey, can I have a word with them? And I'm standing outside the door as the grandpa closes the door, freezing, kind of out of breath, when I feel the prompting of the Holy Spirit just say, who's the crazy one now, Steve? I'm a student ministry pastor at this time. And then the door opens and it's 2 6th graders who are literally like scared little puppies. They can't even look me in the eye. And I'm like, what am I doing? And I just look at them and I say, hey guys, I just want you to know that was a nice shot. And I walk away. And as I'm walking away, I'm like, what is really going on? I'll tell you what was going on. It was the last time I was going to see my grandparents because we had said yes to a job transition. We were moving to Southern California in a week. And the people who said they were going to buy our house backed out on our way to our grandparents' house. And in this moment, what was happening within me was literally the fear. Are we going to be okay? Is someone going to buy our house? I was feeling all of these feelings that I don't actually think God's got us in this moment. And what happened was that this chunk of ice that hit my windshield, because I didn't know how to be honest and human with that sadness, gave me the opportunity of release. It gave me permission to translate all of those emotions towards 6th graders. It wasn't my finest hour. And I'll never forget, I called my mentor, Rob, and I said the next day, and I said, Rob, this is what happened. And he's laughing at me, and he just simply says, Steve, welcome to getting after the thing beneath the thing, the endless discovery of what's really going on. Friends, you got to understand, every day we make choices, and the choices we make are bewildering to people sometimes. As I walked back with freezing cold, soaking wet pants, my decision to leave my wife and my 9-month-old on the side of the road in a snowstorm was very bewildering, not just to myself, but also to my wife. And I want to talk about this because until we get after what's really going on within, we will start to make decisions that go against God's best for our life. And this is why Paul says in Romans chapter 7, I do the thing I don't want to do. The thing I want to do, I do not do. The thing I hate, I do. And maybe for some of you, if you're honest, you can relate to that. The thing you want to do, you just don't do. But the thing you absolutely hate, you react, or you get frustrated, or you run to this escape again and again and again. And for many of us, this is our pattern of life, and we feel stuck. And it's not just confusing to us, it's bewildering to all around us. So why was the city of Susa bewildered? I'll tell you. Let's look at verse 13. It says this, dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews. Young and old, women and children on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Wait. The whole city is bewildered because couriers have been sent out throughout all of King Xerxes' territory to say in a few months, there is going to be a mass genocide, which makes you wonder, how does a genocide get started? Like, who would actually think this is a really, really good idea? Well, let's keep reading backwards. Let's go to verse 8. Then Haman, remember, he's the right-hand man of the king, said to King Xerxes, there is a certain people dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves separate. They're different. Look what it says. Their customs are different from those of all the other people, and they do not obey the king's laws. It is not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will give 10,000 talents of silver to the king's administrators for the royal treasury. So Haman, the right-hand man, who had been sitting down for a drink with the king, he's like, hey, there's this group of people, and they're different. Their customs are different. The way that they orient their life is different. And seriously, you have no right to tolerate them. And actually, we don't need them. And I'm actually going to bankroll this. I'm literally going to spend my own money, and I think we should annihilate them. And the scriptures will go on to say that the king said, keep your money, do what you please. But what would cause someone? What would cause someone to say, hey, I don't just want to annihilate an entire race of people, but I actually will bankroll it? Let's go to verse 2. It gets even crazier. Verse 2 says this: all the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai, he's a new character in the story who is a Jew, but Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials at the king's gate asked Mordecai, why do you disobey the king's command? Day after day, they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore, they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. But verse 5, hear these words. When Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people. You want to know why the entire city is bewildered? While the king and his right-hand man have a drink? It's because a genocide was being willing to be bankrolled because one man wouldn't kneel down and showcase honor, and somehow that action triggered Haman to say, I gotta annihilate all of them. Now, please hear me. I'm not saying that any of us have the means or the power to showcase a massive genocide in our day. But I will say, after 20 years of doing pastoral ministry, people coming and sitting in my office, I've realized that nobody wakes up one day and goes, today's the day. Today's the day I train wreck my life. Today's the day I self-sabotage every good thing that God has given to me. Today's the day that I literally blow up whatever character and integrity I have in my story and literally create massive amounts of collateral damage, not just internally, but also within my family. I don't think any of us wake up and do that. But somehow it keeps happening. So the question is why? Which brings me to the city of Chicago, my favorite city on the planet. The city of Chicago, if you know, and you've been driving in it, you know that the city of Chicago is filled with potholes. I mean, they are literally everywhere. And as you're driving through the city of Chicago, often you're trying to maneuver around these craters that are on and in the streets and highways. I remember one day I was flipping on the sports radio and probably listening to Waddle and Sylvie, and I hit a pothole, and I knew right away, flat tire. I pull the car over, I get out, and I inspect the right front tire, and I realize, oh yeah, it's a flat. But here's the thing, the city of Chicago has a number, 311. And if you dial 311 and report a pothole, and literally, if the city of Chicago has not fixed it in time, they will pay for your damages and repairs. No wonder the city of Chicago is going bankrupt. But that's a different sermon. But what I realized is I'm dialing this and I'm praying, please, I hope that someone has reported this and there was clerical error. Someone picks up and says, nope, this is the first time this one is being reported. And I start, maybe it's the teacher in me, but I start getting curious and I'm like, you have your own number to report potholes. Like, how many potholes do you fill in? And she said, well, it's kind of fascinating. The city of Chicago, like Chicago Tribune just did a story on this. And can you guess between January 1st and March 21st of 2018, how many potholes we filled in? Less than 100 days. I say 25,000. She says a little bit more. I say 35,000. She says a little bit more. Finally, I'm like, ma'am, just tell me. And she says 108,000. If you go to the city of Chicago's website, they have a pothole tracker, no joke, where they literally show their work. And here's what they do. They walk up and they see these potholes. And it's basically water that has been frozen, that has expanded, and the asphalt can't deal with that elasticity. And so a crater is created. They see it. They throw some asphalt in. They check the blue circle in the pothole tracker, and they move on. But often, sometimes they get and they realize this wasn't caused by inclement weather that is frozen. There's actually something happening underneath the surface. Some form of erosion, maybe like a leaky pipe, something with sewage. And if they don't deal with this correctly and get to what I call the thing beneath the thing, a pothole can quickly become a sinkhole. And in 2016, a man was driving in the city of Chicago, 72-year-old man, and had the ride of his life as he dropped a few stories. An entire road gave out. And here's the thing, millions of dollars of damage. The truth is, every day when we make decisions that aren't God's best, we have the chance to do collateral damage, not just within us, but within those who come around us. And what I've come to realize is that every one of us has potholes. And every day there are people who get close to those potholes. And if we don't actually get to the thing beneath the thing, those potholes will become sinkholes that will do grave damage to those around us. So the thing is an acronym. And what I want to do is I want to be able to help you in a remaining time be able to locate and identify what is really going on, why you really do the things that you do. So the T is triggers. And this is the setup that sets us off. These are our potholes, and we all have them. And the truth is, when people get close to us, and this happens every single day, we get triggered. And oftentimes when we get triggered, we run to something. It's all of this cortisol, all of this energy in our bodies, and we want to release. And the first place that we go is to a hideout. And this is the metaphorical places we go to escape the pain of our story. I don't know where you go. Maybe you go to food. Maybe you go to buying something. Maybe you go to more socially unacceptable habits and patterns. And maybe you drink too much. Maybe you just try to escape in a different relationship, looking for love, looking for connection. And the truth is, like massive companies, they understand this. They understand that every day you're going to get triggered. This is why Amazon created the one-click button, because like they know that you're looking for something. And so you hit the one-click button and you're like, why did I buy another lawn gnome? I don't need a lawn gnome. But by the time you try to return it, it's already at your house. But literally, we have these hideouts that we go. And for some of us, when we get triggered, we go to a hideout. Or many of us, when we get triggered, we go and feel this deep sense of insecurity. And this is the false stories we create about ourselves. And for many of us, we just power down and we hear the lies that were spoken over us. You're never gonna be good. You're never enough. You're not like your sister. Why do you always screw up? And all of these old tapes just keep playing and playing and playing, and we just power down. But sometimes our insecurity isn't in powering down. We feel like we're losing control. We're losing the moment. And for some of us, out of insecurity, we power up. We try to regain control. And anybody who gets in our way, we're verbally abusive. We go after them emotionally because we're trying to regain the room. For some of us, we've experienced that. Every time I see this, I see someone got triggered and they chose insecurity. Another place that many of us go when we get triggered isn't to hideouts or to insecurities, it's to narratives. And this is where we create false stories about other people based on our pain, based on our wounds. And somebody does something and it reminds us of something else and we're like, they all are like that. It's those people. It's all of them. And we've created these false narratives in a way to self-preserve and protect. And we're pushing people away and we're saying terrible things about another. And you see this every day on Facebook. You see this every day on Twitter, and you definitely see this every day on the Nextdoor app. And the truth is, all I'm seeing is people getting triggered and not knowing what to do with it. And so they lash out, creating a narrative about their neighbor, creating a narrative about God's creation. So there's got to be a better way. Because every day we are going to get triggered because every one of us has potholes. But we've got to make sure that our potholes don't become a sinkhole that doesn't just affect us, but it affects everyone around us. So the G is for grace. And what I've come to realize is John Wesley, an amazing scholar, he talked about 3 stages of grace. And the third stage is what he referred to as sanctifying grace. And this is the grace that the Spirit actually does within us. See, many of us, we think of just grace as saying yes to Jesus and getting that free ticket to heaven. But Jesus had a bigger understanding of grace. That this kind of ongoing process of grace that makes us whole, holy, and spiritually healthy. And I want this for you. I want this for every one of us. And I remember one day coming home, and I was frustrated at someone at work, and it was many, many years ago, and I was telling my wife, and I was looking for a little bit of backup. I tell my wife, and my wife looks at me, and she's like, "Isn't God so kind?" I'm like, "What do you mean God's so kind? This guy has said terrible things." I'm like, "What do you mean he's so kind?" And she says, "God's so kind because he keeps bringing people into your life that remind you of someone who deeply wounded you. And he's giving you a chance to have the courage to honor the truth of that pain. And until you get curious, until you honor that truth, you're going to keep getting triggered again and again and again." And that did something for me. Because now every time I get triggered, I recognize it's a part of a past pain, a past wound, something that I haven't dealt with. And what God wants to do is bring his grace, his love, his heart to try and make you whole, holy, and spiritually healthy. Because if we don't get to this, we don't get curious, we'll just continue to react. And every time we react, all we're doing is reenacting the past. And you can know this, because whenever you get hysterical, you have to understand, as my counselor says, it is historical. And so we've got to be able to step back and get curious. So here's some questions to close. What triggers you? What are your triggers? Someone cuts you off? You feel out of control? What triggers you? Take a moment. Write that down. But then get curious. What's underneath that? What happened in your past and in your story that created this pothole? And if you're like me, where do you go to hide out? Where do you go to escape the feeling? For so many years, I racked up credit card debt. That's what I did. I just had to escape, and so I went and bought something with money I didn't have. Or what about insecurities? What's the false stories that you create about yourself? The shame storms that just rain down these lies from the pit of hell. Write down, what are those lies? Or when you get triggered, what are the narratives that you often think, feel, type, tweet, and sometimes even say about another? And what if you actually trusted God's grace, God's goodness, to actually do what God wants to do, which is to make you whole, holy, and spiritually healthy? This is why I wrote The Thing Beneath the Thing, because I believe that if we can get to this, we will make better decisions. I want to end by reading something over you, Forest City. These words I wrote, and as I was just kind of praying and thinking about this teach, I just wanted to say these words over you. My brothers and sisters of Forest City Church, we are all mysterious and wild, a collection of sounds and stories inscribed over the years. We are all made up of hopes, fears, and desires. We are all products of the messages of love and shame we received. We are all full of energy, excitement, and oh so many feels. It's who I am. It's who you are. Sacred and holy. The weight of feeling not enough and way too much, often in the very same breath. Every room you walk into, you bring this. Your whole self. All of you. Yet most of the time, you and I are unable to identify and locate what is churning within. Like shadows that follow us, our outward attitudes and actions reflect the steps our internal world set. We have become functional, yet disconnected. Efficient, yet unaware. Our bodies carry both truths and lies. Every narrative we have been subjected to, fiction as well as nonfiction, the body knows, it holds, it controls all of us until we honor its truth. My brothers and sisters, let's get to the thing beneath the thing. Let's not keep making decisions based as a way to escape our trigger points. And let's become the kind of people who receive grace so that we can become whole, holy, and spiritually healthy. Grace and peace. I love you, Forest City.